My name is Caitlin, and at 34, I was drowning. Every day, I hauled grocery bags home after 12-hour shifts, changing buses 3 times across town. My husband, Jack, had been horizontal on our living room couch for 2 years straight, watching TV while I worked myself into exhaustion. Our savings were gone, my body was failing, and resentment had replaced love in our marriage. Then one rainy evening, bus number 42 changed everything. A conversation between strangers revealed the truth I had been too tired to see. Before I share what I overheard that night, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and hit subscribe if you've ever felt invisible in your own home. I never imagined my life would become an endless marathon of obligation and exhaustion. 10 years ago, I graduated with a business degree full of ambition and plans to climb the corporate ladder. My parents had worked hard to put me through college, the first in our family to attend. I dreamed of executive positions, maybe even starting my own company someday. The world seemed full of possibility. Then I met Jack at my friend Allison's barbecue. He arrived with a cooler of craft beers and a smile that lit up his entire face. At 32, he was 6 years older than me, established in his career as a construction supervisor and confident in a way that drew me in immediately. We talked for hours that day, and when he asked for my number, my heart practically leapt out of my chest. Our courtship was a whirlwind. Jack showed up at my apartment with flowers and surprised me with concert tickets. He cooked elaborate meals and told me stories about growing up in a small town in Ohio. He worked hard during the week managing crews of 20 men, but always made time for us on weekends. "You're the most fascinating woman I've ever met," he would tell me, running his fingers through my hair. "I love how your mind works." Within 8 months, he proposed on a hiking trip, getting down on one knee at the summit as the sun rose. I said yes without hesitation. We planned a small ceremony in my parents' backyard, nothing extravagant because we were saving for a house. The first years of marriage were everything I had hoped for. We found a modest 3-bedroom in a good school district with a small yard and friendly neighbors. Jack worked overtime to help with the mortgage, and I secured a position as an administrative assistant at Westbrook Financial. The pay wasn't amazing, but the benefits were good, and there seemed to be opportunities for advancement. "Mom, I need $25 for the field trip today," Emma announced, handing me a crumpled form that was due yesterday. "My science project is due, and I need a poster board," Lucas whined, milk dribbling down his chin. I closed my eyes, calculating our checking account balance in my head. $17 until payday. Another problem to solve later. "I'll figure it out, sweetie. Lucas, I'll pick up a poster board during my lunch break. Now hurry. Mrs. Peterson is driving you today." As the kids grabbed their backpacks, I glanced at the couch where Jack would relocate when he eventually woke up. The indent of his body was permanent now, the cushions worn into the exact shape of his lanky frame. "Kiss Daddy goodbye when he wakes up," I told the kids, knowing that he wouldn't be conscious until long after they'd left. The morning bus was crowded with other tired workers. I squeezed into a seat, balancing my purse and tote bag on my lap. 45 minutes later, I arrived at Westbrook Financial, where I'd been an administrative assistant for 9 years. My desk was already piled with folders when I arrived. Additional work from Diana, the marketing manager, who knew I wouldn't say no. "Caitlin, thank God you're here," she exclaimed, dropping another stack of papers. "The Johnson presentation got moved up to tomorrow, and I need all of these reorganized by section and priority. Oh, and can you grab coffee for the team meeting? Thanks, you're a lifesaver." She disappeared before I could respond. I swallowed my resentment and got to work. During my supposed lunch break, I ran to the store for Lucas's poster board, then ate a sandwich at my desk while formatting spreadsheets. At 3, I took a 5-minute bathroom break where I splashed water on my face and called the kids to make sure they'd gotten home safely. Dad's playing video games, Emma reported. He said he's too busy to help with my math homework. Put him on the phone, I said, trying to keep my voice level. After several moments of Emma calling for him, Jack finally picked up. "What? I'm in the middle of something," he said, irritation evident. "The kids need help with homework. Jack, could you please take 30 minutes to assist them? I'm swamped at work." "I've got a killer headache, Caitlin. Been fighting it all day. Plus, I had a phone interview this morning that went terribly, so I'm not exactly in the mood to explain fractions." The lie was so obvious it made my stomach clench. There had been no phone interview. The house phone would have shown a call history, and his cell phone had been disconnected months ago as a cost-cutting measure. "The children need their father," I said quietly. "They need dinner and clean clothes, too." "But I don't see you handling that at the moment either," he shot back, then hung up. I stood in the bathroom stall, hands shaking with rage and exhaustion. A knock on the door startled me. "Caitlin Marks? Looking for the quarterly projections," called Diana's assistant. Back at my desk, Mark wanted the projections completely reformatted from. The bus was more crowded than usual because of the rain. Commuters shook water from umbrellas and raincoats, creating a symphony of droplets against the metal flooring. I squeezed past damp bodies, balancing grocery bags while trying not to bump anyone with my purse. The usual seats near the front were occupied, forcing me toward the back, where the engine noise would at least drown out my sniffling. I found a spot behind 2 women deep in conversation. They hadn't noticed me, their voices low but still audible above the rumble of the bus and the rhythmic swish of windshield wipers. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but as I settled my bags on the floor between my feet, their words began to register. 2 years now, the woman closest to the window was saying. She was in her 40s, professionally dressed with short auburn hair. At first, I believed him when he said the job market was impossible. I mean, the economy was bad, right? But eventually, I realized he'd stopped trying months ago. My head jerked up involuntarily. She could have been describing Jack. He had a new excuse every day. Back pain was the main one, though doctors found nothing wrong. Then it was headaches, insomnia, general fatigue, but never too tired to play video games or watch sports all day. The second woman nodded thoughtfully. She was older, perhaps in her 50s, with silver-streaked dark hair and an elegant pantsuit. "And you were handling everything? Work, children, house, finances?" "Everything." I'd come home exhausted after working overtime, and he'd ask what was for dinner, as if it were still my responsibility despite being home all day. The dishes would be piled up, laundry untouched. When I asked for help, there was always some reason he couldn't. I froze, grocery bags forgotten at my feet. This stranger was articulating my daily reality with uncanny precision. The older woman sighed. "What you're describing is unfortunately common in my practice. I'm a therapist specializing in relationship dynamics, and I see this pattern regularly." "You mean other women are living this nightmare too?" Auburn Hair asked. "More than you think. What you're experiencing combines several psychological patterns. First, there's what we call learned helplessness, when someone convinces themselves they're incapable of improving their situation, so they stop trying. That sounds like depression," Auburn Hair said. "It can be related to depression, yes, but there's an important distinction. In pure depression, the person typically recognizes their impairment and feels genuine distress about it. What you're describing includes elements of what we call strategic incompetence." The term sent a chill down my spine. It's when someone consciously or unconsciously performs tasks poorly or claims inability so others will stop asking them to do those tasks. It's particularly common in household labor dynamics. If someone loads the dishwasher so badly that dishes come out dirty, eventually their partner stops asking and just does it themselves. Auburn Hair leaned forward. Are you saying my husband is faking inability? Not necessarily faking in the deliberate sense. These patterns often operate below conscious awareness. But ask yourself, does his inability seem selective? Is he too exhausted to take out the trash but able to play video games for hours? Too foggy-headed to remember school forms but perfectly capable of recalling sports statistics? Yes, exactly that. Auburn-Hare's voice rolled slightly before she caught herself. The therapist nodded. Another component is enabling behavior. When we continuously compensate for someone's failure to meet responsibilities, we inadvertently reinforce their behavior. They experience no net. Lucas came running to hug me around the waist. Emma looked up from her notebook with relief. Can you help me with my science questions? Dad said he doesn't remember fifth grade science. Jack raised a hand in lazy acknowledgement of my arrival without taking his eyes off the screen. There's nothing for dinner, he announced, as though this were my failure rather than his. I moved through our evening routine on autopilot, helping with homework, preparing a simple pasta meal, checking backpacks for tomorrow. But something had changed. I was watching myself and Jack with new awareness, cataloging each interaction through the lens of what I'd heard on the bus. When Jack complained about back pain as I asked him to set the table, I noticed how quickly the pain vanished when his favorite show came on. When he claimed to be too foggy to help Lucas with simple math, but recited detailed sports statistics minutes later, the contradiction was glaring. How had I not seen this pattern before? After the children were in bed, I sat at our desktop computer in the corner of the living room. Jack snored, providing background noise from the couch. I typed learned helplessness, relationships, into the search bar, and page after page of articles appeared. I read about enabling behaviors, codependency, and the concept of overfunctioning while a partner underfunctions. One article described my life with eerie accuracy. The overfunctioner becomes increasingly exhausted and resentful, while the underfunctioner becomes increasingly incapable and dependent. The dynamic keeps both parties stuck. One too overwhelmed to create change, the other too comfortable to want it. I found an online forum for partners of unemployed spouses. The stories mirrored mine with such precision that tears sprang to my eyes. One woman described sneaking into the bathroom to cry between meetings at work. Another detailed calculating how much debt she could manage if she left. A third shared her realization that her husband's job search consisted of sending a single application weekly to maintain the appearance of trying. I created an anonymous account and posted my situation. Responses flooded in within hours. He won't change while you're managing everything. Ask yourself, if your son grew up to treat his wife this way, would you be okay with that? This isn't just about unemployment. It's about respect and partnership. You're modeling martyrdom for your daughter. Is that what you want for her future? That last comment hit like a physical blow. What was I teaching Emma about her value and what she should accept from a partner? What was I showing Lucas about a man's responsibilities to his family? The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in years. After getting the children to school, I sat in my car in the parking lot and called my sister Lauren. Kaylin, is everything okay? Her concern was immediate. We hadn't spoken properly in months. Quick texts and holiday gatherings were all our busy lives had allowed. No, I admitted, my voice cracking. Nothing is okay. I poured out everything. The financial struggles, Jack's 2-year couch residence, my growing resentment, and finally, the bus conversation that had illuminated it all. There was a long pause after I finished speaking. I've been worried about this, Lauren finally said. The few times I've visited, I notice how Jack always has an excuse when you ask for help. I didn't want to interfere, but honestly, it looks like manipulation from the outside. Why didn't you say anything? I asked, hurt that she'd seen what I couldn't. Would you have heard it 6 months ago? Or would you have defended him? She was right. I would have explained away his behavior, made excuses, insisted he was trying. I had been so invested in the narrative of supporting my struggling husband that I couldn't see the reality. Grown-up talks. Their excitement about the sleepover had been tinged with confusion. We rarely spent nights apart, but Lauren had distracted them with promises of movies and baking. Jack had barely registered their absence, grunting acknowledgement when I mentioned they'd be gone for the weekend. Now he sat at our kitchen table, coffee mug in hand, scrolling through sports highlights on his phone. I took a deep breath and sat across from him. "We need to talk, Jack. About everything." He glanced up briefly. "Can it wait? The Celtics playoff recap is on in 10. "No, it can't wait. This is important." Something in my tone must have registered because he set down his phone with a sigh. "What's wrong now? Is it the shawl count? I told you to stop stressing about work on weekends." The dismissiveness in his voice nearly derailed my resolve. This was his standard tactic, minimizing my concerns, making my stress seem like a character flaw rather than a reasonable response to our circumstances. "This isn't about work. It's about us. About what's happened to our marriage over the past 2 years. His posture stiffened. "Here we go again, another lecture about me finding a job. I told you I'm trying, the market is—" "Stop." My voice was firm enough to surprise us both. "I've been tracking your browser history, Jack. In the past month, you've submitted exactly 2 job applications. 2. You spend an average of 7 hours a day on video games and sports sites." His face flushed red. "You're spying on me. What the hell, Caitlin?" I needed to know the truth, and the truth is, you stopped genuinely trying to find work over a year ago. "You have no idea how hard it is out there. My industry collapsed." "There are other industries, retail, customer service, delivery services, dozens of options. They might not be your dream jobs, but they'd help support your family." "So I should just take any menial position, destroy my career trajectory, work alongside teenagers for minimum wage?" I leaned forward. "Our mortgage is 3 months behind. We're eating ramen noodles for dinner while you complain about job quality. And yes, sometimes supporting your family means taking work that isn't ideal." He stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the linoleum. "I'm not having this conversation. You clearly don't respect what I'm going through." As he turned toward the living room, toward his sanctuary couch, I played my first card. The internet and cable will be disconnected on Monday. He froze mid-step. "What?" "I can't afford them anymore. My salary barely covers the mortgage and utilities as it is." He turned slowly. "You can't do that. I need internet for job searching." "The library has free internet 6 blocks from here. They're open 8 hours a day, 6 days a week." His eyes narrowed. "Is this some kind of manipulation, punishing me because you're stressed about money?" "It's not punishment, Jack. It's reality. We're drowning financially while you spend your days consuming services we can't afford." He paced the kitchen, running his hands through his hair. "So what, you want me to take some dead-end job stocking shelves? Is that your big solution?" "I want you to contribute in any way, because right now I'm carrying everything. Work, children, house, finances, while you contribute nothing." The television yielded only static, and his outrage was immediate. "This is childish, Caitlin. Punishing me won't solve anything." "It's not punishment. It's financial necessity. The money for luxuries simply doesn't exist anymore." The first week was a power struggle of epic proportions. Jack made a show of leaving the house with his resume, then returned claiming every business had turned him away. He performed household tasks with deliberate incompetence. Shrunken laundry, burnt dinners, cleaning that left surfaces dirtier than before. "See," he'd say with manufactured innocence, "I told you I'm not good at this stuff." I refused to take the bait. That's okay. Practice helps. Try again tomorrow. By the second week, his resistance tactics shifted. He began playing the victim, sighing heavily while folding towels, wincing dramatically when lifting a laundry basket as though his back might give out at any moment. When this failed to elicit sympathy, he tried sporadic cooperation. 1 day of productive job searching, followed by 3 days of television at his mother's house. The children noticed the changes, confused by their father's erratic behavior and the new chore chart on the refrigerator that included his name. "Is that sick?" Lucas asked one evening. "He keeps saying he's too tired to play catch, but then he goes to Uncle Brian's to watch football." "Dad is learning some new routines," I explained carefully. "Sometimes change is hard for grown-ups too." By week 3, Jack's mother arrived unannounced at our door, determined to mediate. "This tough love approach isn't working," she insisted. "Jack is depressed. He needs support, not deadlines." "I've supported him for 2 years," I replied evenly. "Depression explains behavior, but it doesn't excuse the absence of effort. He's refused therapy, medication, and job counseling. At some point, mental health becomes his responsibility, not mine." She left in a huff, but her visit seemed to impact Jack. That evening, he approached me in the kitchen, his expression uncharacteristically serious. "You're really going to leave if I don't change, aren't you?" he asked quietly. I nodded, continuing to pack lunches for the next day. "Yes." "Even after everything we've built together?" I set down the knife I was using to spread peanut butter. "Jack, what exactly have we built together recently? For 2 years, I've been building alone, while you've been a spectator in our life." He had no response to that. The following day, he had a job interview scheduled at a home improvement store. It wasn't in construction management, but it would use his knowledge of building materials and tools. The position offered about 25 hours a week. Not full-time, but a start. The morning of the interview, I found him still in bed at 9:30. Hadn't taken it that day. Jack nodded slowly. "Yeah," he said quietly. "That was the day everything started to change, wasn't it?" I smiled faintly. "It was the day I stopped pretending we were okay. Sometimes hitting rock bottom is what gives you the clarity to rebuild." He leaned back, staring at the ceiling. "Funny thing is, I used to think that losing my job was the worst thing that could happen. But maybe it was what we both needed to wake up." We sat in silence for a while, the soft hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the wall clock filling the space between us. There was no grand epiphany, no dramatic ending, just a quiet sense of peace. The chaos, resentment, and helplessness that had once defined our household had been replaced with something sturdier, more grounded. Not perfection, but partnership. Jack reached for my hand, his thumb brushing lightly over my knuckles. "You know," he said, his voice gentle, "I used to think strength meant never needing help, but you showed me that sometimes it means accepting it and trying again. And I used to think love meant carrying everything alone. Turns out it means trusting someone to carry it with you." Outside, the sounds of laughter drifted faintly from the neighborhood, mingling with the chirping of crickets. Inside, the air felt different, lighter, freer. Our home, once shadowed by silence and resentment, now echoed with the sounds of ordinary life, clinking dishes, quiet conversations, and laughter. As I glanced across the room at the man who had once been a stranger in his own family, I felt something unfamiliar but deeply welcome. Hope. Not the fragile kind that clings to what was, but the steady kind that believes in what can still be built. For the first time in a long while, we weren't surviving. We were living. And that, after everything, was enough. "You hadn't overheard that conversation." "I wonder about that too," Jack admitted. "If you hadn't confronted me, I might still be on that couch watching our marriage and family fall apart." I tried to find that therapist. I wanted to thank her for unknowingly changing our lives. I even took that same bus route several times, hoping to see her again. No luck. I shook my head. But maybe that's fitting. She was a messenger who appeared exactly when needed, said what needed to be heard, and moved on. Jack reached for my hand. The messenger mattered, but so did the listener. Someone else might have heard that same conversation and done nothing. You were desperate enough to listen and brave enough to act. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, reflecting. Then Jack spoke again, his tone thoughtful. I've been seeing a pattern in my therapy sessions about why I fell apart so completely after losing my job. It wasn't just about income or status, though those mattered. It was about identity and purpose. I nodded, encouraging him to continue. I had defined myself solely as a successful provider for so long that when that role disappeared, I felt like nothing. Without that job title, I didn't know who I was or what value I had. He swirled the wine in his glass. Instead of building a new identity, I retreated into nothingness. That makes sense, I said softly, and it was probably easier to be nothing than to risk trying and failing again. Exactly. Each day of doing nothing made doing something even more terrifying. It was like being paralyzed, watching myself disappear but unable to stop it. What changed? I asked, genuinely curious about his view of his transformation. He considered the question carefully. The ultimatum broke through the paralysis, but what really changed was rediscovering that I'm more than my job. I'm a father, a husband, a person with skills and worth beyond a paycheck. His words echoed what I had witnessed throughout his recovery. As Jack reconnected with his multiple roles and sources of value, his dependency and helplessness gradually dissolved. I think there's something important there for both of us, I said. I had reduced myself to survivor and provider too, losing everything in the exhaustion and stress. We both got stuck in single identities that weren't sustainable, Jack agreed, and we're both finding our way back to being whole people. The journey had been painful, but ultimately healing, for each of us and for our marriage. I had learned hard lessons about boundaries, enabling behavior, and my own role in maintaining unhealthy dynamics. Jack had confronted his fears of inadequacy and failure, developing resilience and a renewed sense of self-worth. Our relationship, once defined by imbalance and resentment, had evolved into a true partnership, grounded in mutual respect and contribution. We communicated honestly, shared responsibilities fairly, and supported each other's growth instead of being trapped in rigid roles. The most profound lesson, though, was about the nature of true support. I used to believe I was helping Jack by compensating for his inaction, carrying the entire load while he recovered. In reality, I was enabling his dysfunction. Real support meant believing in his capability enough